For our final episode 2024, we are thrilled to close up the year with an extraordinary guest, the one and only Joe Mantegna. Known for his iconic role as David Rossi in Criminal Minds, The Godfather Part 3, and his Tony Award-winning performance in Glengarry Glen Ross. Joe's career is truly legendary. Today we will dive into his latest work as executive producer and narrator of two acclaimed projects, Camila and the Miracle Filly, an heartwarming documentary that already won 7 awards, and San Pio Pietrelcina, Man of Hope and Healing, a powerful docudrama. Joe, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much.
So, Joe, Criminal Minds is such a beloved show. What drew you to the role of David Rossi, and what does the character mean to you?
Well, first of all, I was first introduced to the show through a dear friend of mine who was an actor named Meshach Taylor, who many people will remember from, he was on a show Designing Women. He's done many movies. My wife and I have been friends with him back from the late 60s. We both started our careers together in the play Hair way back then. So he's a friend for many, many years. He turned me on to that show. He told me, Joe, you have to watch this show, Criminal Minds. He really loved it. And I don't really watch a lot of television, but I said, I'll watch a little bit of that, Meshach, because you like it so much. Well, as it turned out, it was shortly thereafter I get this call from the television show saying, they're looking to, this one actor was leaving the show, and it was early on, and they were only in their 3rd season, but they were looking to replace him, and they were offering me this role. And I said, wow, this is that show Meshach liked so much. So in other words, I was already attracted to the idea because of his excitement about it, me watching it, saying, yeah, this looks like a pretty good show. So that's when I joined the show. And then I was able to actually, some years into it, about I think season 5 or 6, or maybe a little later, I was able to bring Meshach in and they created a character for him. And my assistant, in fact, wrote the first episode. We wound up doing 3 episodes that involved his character. And he played my commanding officer in Vietnam because I wanted my character to be I do a lot with our military, and I wanted my character to be a former military person so that we can have a storyline that dealt with veterans and serious issues with them. So we had this whole storyline about that this character Meshach played was my commanding officer in Vietnam, and now he was homeless on the streets of Los Angeles. Why is he homeless? And I help him out, and there's a whole storyline of I put him into a facility that actually is a real facility here in Los Angeles called New Directions that takes in homeless veterans who are either drug addicted or alcoholics or for whatever reason or need help. So that became a crossover between my career and my personal life. And then that actor actually passed away, my dear, dear friend. And we were able to do the 3rd episode after he passed of all about the character's funeral and his death and all of that. And we had a big Marine funeral for him in the show. And so here was a situation where I was not just burying one of my best friends. I was actually burying a character from the show, but also burying one of my real friends in real life. So it was very, very important to me. So which gets more into your question too about the character David Rossi. I purposely made him an Italian American because I am an Italian American, and I thought I learned early on in my career, if you're going to do a series and you have a choice of input on the character, try to pick something that's close to you personally, because you may be playing it for quite a while. It's not like a movie or a play where you do it one time and then it's done. And as it turns out, I've just finished my 16th year on the show. So it really came to pass that, yes, it was important, or it was, I think, beneficial for me to incorporate much of who I am, at least in terms of my background, in terms of my heritage, in terms of my many things about me, into that character. So when you see David Rossi, there are many aspects about that character that I think are actually personal to Joe Mantegna as well, and that makes it much easier and more fun and more personable and personal for me to do.
You have become a beloved figure in both Hollywood and Italian American community. How has your heritage influenced your work and the project you take on?
Well, yes, it influences greatly, and I think I explained much of it even in my last answer, that I've had the opportunity to play different ethnic roles throughout my career. I've been doing this for over 60 years now in this business. But when given the choice, I often will gravitate toward playing an Italian American, partly because I want to offset sometimes some of the negative stereotypes that Italian Americans get. And I've played those characters as well. I mean, I did the movie Godfather 3. I played this character Fat Tony on The Simpsons, which is kind of more of a spoof kind of a thing. So, and I understand it, but I make no apologies about that. And my feeling is this: look, in terms of like the Godfather movies, the mafia does exist. It did exist. There were Italian Americans involved. I get it. Mm-hmm. That's fine. We're telling a story. But on the other hand, you've got Italian Americans going back to Da Vinci and Dante and all the great Italian. So when given the opportunity, I've always chosen to play an Italian American in very positive roles. I did that on the series Joan of Arcadia. I made that character an Italian American. When I did the series First Monday, where I played a member of the Supreme Court, I made that character an Italian American. I did 2 Woody Allen movies. I've made both those characters Italian Americans. I've done it on Criminal Minds, because my point is this: we shouldn't be stereotyping any ethnicity, whether it's Italian, Irish, German, black, white, whatever you want to call it. But it's okay to just show, look, there's going to be individuals in any, whether it's a nationality, race, whatever it may be, or there's going to be the good and the bad and everything in between. But I want to just show a fair representation of all of it. So the times that I've had to portray somebody with a negative aspect, and the nationality shouldn't really have anything to do with it anyway. But the fact when it calls upon it, like something like The Godfather, when these people were of a certain ethnicity, fine, we tell the story and then that's that. But on the other hand, I want to show the other side of the scale as well. I did a movie in Italy called Pontormo, based on this Renaissance painter. It was a Renaissance painter. So it's been a real joy for me to be able to run the gamut of playing all kinds of different characters, and many of them of Italian descent. But I'm not just limited to that as well. I've played all kinds of different characters throughout my career, and that's why I feel very blessed. I have a fun profession. I make a living what children do for fun. Play make believe.
You've had obviously a long and very successful career in both TV and film. What role or project are you most proud of, and why?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there is one role. I mean, because I've been doing this for so long and I've enjoyed so much of it, I can't point to one thing and say, oh yeah, that's the one. There's an abundance of them. I mean, I could make a list and probably pick you a top 10 category. I can think back. Sometimes it's not even the role. Sometimes it's just the whole experience. As I said, I've made 4 or 5 pictures in Europe, maybe 3 or 4 in Italy. I've worked in Moscow. I've worked in Germany. I've worked in Australia. And just those experiences, many times in Canada, just the experience of being able to go to these places with my family and my children, that in itself is things I'll remember all my life. Certain roles, of course, are important. I think the fact I got to play Dean Martin in the movie The Rat Pack was thrilling for me, because he was a hero of mine. I mean, I loved his music. I loved him as an actor, as a personality, and I've got to know many members of his family because I played that role. I love the fact that I've been playing David Rossi for 16 years, who was based on he wasn't based on a real character, but I named him after a man who was a real Los Angeles policeman, and it was my way of honoring people in uniform everywhere who have to have this is their job, and then sometimes they don't get the luxury of knowing that they're going to come home at night because they're in a dangerous profession. So I picked a real person who was with the police department and used his name because he was an Italian American. He was about ready to retire. He spent many years on the Los Angeles Police Department, and became a friend of mine. And I thought, through him, I'm going to honor everybody who does this line of work. So that's an important character. But beyond that, there have been, many. I mean, when I played the Ricky Roma in the play Glengarry Glen Ross, which changed my career because the play won the Pulitzer Prize. I won the Tony Award back in 1984. That was a big, big move for me in terms of my profession. But I've enjoyed it all. I mean, from kind of the goofy little movies I've done in the past to what I'm doing today and everything in between. So I really couldn't point to one thing, but like I said, as I think about it, there's a whole series and conglomeration of things that are very meaningful to me.
So, Joe, you are the executive producer and narrator of Camila and the Miracle Filly. What inspired you to get involved in this documentary, and what message do you hope viewers take away from it?
Well, first of all, I was approached by Miss Aliota, who is just this incredible human being. On
Shout out! Can we say hi to Angela Aliotto?
Please do. Yeah. So when Angela reached out to me, and in a way, it came through. The reason I learned about Angela was through the Padre Pio, because my connection with Padre Pio and with Luciano La Monarca, who runs that. So in other words, somehow I have to think maybe Padre Pio had a little hand in this, making this happen. But he, Luciano told me, he said, he had this friend, Angela, and of course I knew who the Aliota family was, having lived out here in California for many years and knew about her father and what a prestigious person he had been in San Francisco. I said, oh, sure, I'd love to talk to her about this project. And then when I met her and talked to her and explained to her, she explained to me what she was doing and what this whole thing was. I was just so taken by it. She's a wonderful human being. I loved the passion she had for not just this horse, but for animals in general, and then specifically this horse, and how she was not going to take no for an answer and was going to do whatever she can to, no matter what people were telling her. Well, this looks like a hopeless case. You should just, put this horse down and that's that. She would refuse to take that as no as an answer. This is a woman who's just driven. Her goal is to just be as positive as you can and do what you can as much as you can. And so this was a case of when she explained this whole thing to me and I saw what they had come up with in terms of this film. I said, oh my God, I would be honored to be a part of this. And so I jumped right in and have been involved with it ever since. And of course, I was able to go up and meet the star of the movie, the filly herself, and Camila and her mother and the mayor and all that. And it's been a beautiful connection and something I'm very, very proud of being a part of. I mean, there was a little tragedy involved that the director of the film, actually the very director of the film, met a tragic end due to an accident, and so, which gives us even all the more reason to make this, successful, for it to get out there so that people can watch it, enjoy it, that's what I've been very blessed that this is what I do for a living, that I get a chance to make these kinds of projects, work on these projects, and this is one that's very special to me.
Yeah, this is, like I mentioned many times, this is a story of humanity. This is really the story. And you mentioned, I want to also thank Chris Salvador, wherever you are. That's why I got really emotional this morning. I was telling Alex, because I felt his presence, and he talked to you about you so much to me. And
the wonderful experience he had with you recording.
And I felt like he's present, and I was looking go through his messages, say why keep coming in my mind. I say I can't cry, my mascara, I have to be on camera. Be strong, Samantha, I can't cry. And I felt him, he was smiling, almost he was so happy that we were talking about his film.
Of course.
And I just, I had the honor to meet him, work with him, And he's such a wonderful person. So,
Absolutely. So this is a testament to him. I mean, if you're going to leave a legacy, this is part of his legacy now, and that's why it gives me all the more impetus and energy and desire to make this succeed in his name. Partly in his name.
let's go to Padre Pio, okay? Which
Yes.
is Padre Pio, very close to my dad and my grandfather. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
And I honestly, Alex, I'm honored to ask this question. I'm really honored. In San Pio of Pietrelcina, man of hope and healing, you bring to life the story of San Pio, Padre Pio. What does this project mean to you personally? And what was like working alongside with Andy Garcia and Michele Placido?
Well, again, sometimes things happen because maybe they're just destined to happen, or there's some divine intervention, or whatever you want to call it. But I think of Padre Pio, and I've been aware of him most of my life. I mean, I'm being raised a Catholic and understanding that I went a few years to Catholic school and the saints and this and that, and there's obviously a myriad of saints out there, but here was this one saint that first of all, I'm very close to especially my mother's side of the family, who was from basically a town in Puglia called Acquaviva della Fonte.
Yeah.
Now, this is not far from where Padre Pio, spent his life. And so here was this connection right away, even just in terms of geographic, that I have this family in Puglia that I'm so close to. I'm probably closer to them than to many of my relatives in the United States, because I've been going there since 1975, and they've come here, and they have a special place in my heart. So it seemed almost serendipitous that became this connection. And then I ran into Luciano La Monarca some years ago, who was involved with his Padre Pio Foundation, and so, again, you want to call it divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I don't question those kinds of things. My feeling is, I guess that's where the word faith becomes involved. You either have it or you don't. And so, and I don't like to, I don't overthink it, because my feeling is, I give you an example of, I remember, I'm a Catholic, but I'm not going to pretend that I'm going to say, oh, I'm a great Catholic, that I do all the right things. I go to church every Sunday, this, that. No, I would be, a bolt of lightning would come down from heaven and strike me and say, Joe, why are you saying that? But however, I do remember when my oldest child was born. She was born very, very premature. She was born 3 months early, and she only weighed 1 pound, 13 ounces. And it was an emergency C-section that they did on my wife. And it happened in a Catholic hospital here in Burbank, California, St. Joseph's. And my name is Joseph. It's my patron saint. So here I am at the hospital. I have to go there. They tell me it's an emergency because my wife, like I said, she wasn't supposed to deliver that night, but due to an emergency, they had to take the child out. They take her out. They say she's very, very small. We don't know what's going to happen. We'll do our best. So I remember my wife was unconscious because they had to operate on her. This is 1987. I go. It was late at night. There was a storm here. It was June 5th. There was unusual for California to have a giant rain thunderstorm in June, but we had one that night. The power was out in my home, actually. There was power outages going on throughout the city. I went down to the desk in the hospital, must have been around midnight, and I said, is there a chapel here? They said, of course, it's a Catholic hospital. I remember going into the chapel, and I knelt down and I basically made a confession and said, look, I know I feel like that guy who's like, oh yeah, now I'm asking you for something. When, where have I been all this time? But now I'm asking for some intervention. I'm asking for some help, and saying, please, if all this stuff is true, if all these things I learned as a child, and the fact that my grandmother had statues in her bedroom of the Virgin Mary that were as tall as I am, and things like that, if there really is something to this, please, I can use your help tonight. And all I could tell you is afterwards, the next day when I came to the hospital, they said, well, your daughter survived through the night. I think there's a good chance she's going to make it. Well, my daughter is now 37 years old. She's special needs. She has autism, but I'll take that. I mean, that may be an offshoot of her birth, the difficulty of her birth. But she's a happy child, a beautiful woman. She lives with us. She's just in the next room. And I think of that. I don't have to explain to you because you're
No,
Italian.
it's okay. Yes, I know. I've been crying about this. I lost. Yeah, I totally understand,
Yeah.
Joe. It's all good.
That's what faith is about.
Yeah,
Yes.
Joe, I feel also we're here because also between Padre Pio and the miracle with Camila, my dad and my grandfather, you mentioned the town, my grandfather and my dad, they're from Foggia, which is Padre Pio is like a very
Yes,
close to Pietro.
of course.
And my dad tell me
Of
still today, my dad tell me all the story about Padre Pio. And
Look, I'm 77 years old. My feeling is this: I've had a wonderful life. God willing, it's going to continue for however long it's going to continue. My mother lived to be 101. But all I could say is it makes me, when you get around this age, you get reflective about things. And so all I could say is I've had a very, very blessed life. And I live by the motto, everybody has a story, but nobody gets a free ride. I mean, so sure, I could tell people, oh yeah, I've had this, as I just told you the story of my daughter. But I'm not going to say, oh, woe is me, how that we had to go through this, because again, like I said, my story is my story. But I've had such a blessed life. These are the cards that have been dealt to me in my life, and it's fantastic. I have no complaints. I have no regrets. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I know there are many people in the world who really have had horrible, lives, and are very unfortunate. So thank God there are individuals that come into play. And you take Padre Pio as an example. People who seem to have been brought on this earth for no other reason but to kind of move us forward, move civilization forward, hopefully move mankind in a positive direction. Because
Yeah.
we don't know what it's all about. We'll find out about if there's heaven and hell and all these things at some point or not. But regardless of that, all we can do is be the best that we can be. And thank God there are these people who show up and seem to have that something that whatever it may be, whatever you want to call it, that in this case, sainthood, something that the world has benefited because they existed. The world is a better place because they were there. And so all I could say is I'll never forget that moment walking into that chapel, and for me a prayer got answered. And that's and whether or not that would have happened anyway, I'll never know, but I'll never question it. That's my story, and I'm as the line goes, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
At Crave, we celebrate passion. Beside your incredible career, what one passion that inspired you motivated?
Oh wow, I think just the beauty of life itself, and just to be. Look, I've been very blessed. And my wife and I were going to celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary next year.
Oh,
But we've known each other
wow.
for longer than that.
Yeah,
So
wow.
we've been together for a long time. We've known each other even in high school. We knew each other, but we didn't make the connection till later. So I mean, I've been very blessed with that because she's a very strong woman and very giving woman and caring. And look, there's always obstacles along the way. Nobody has a perfect life. You can't say every minute was fantastic and I wouldn't change a second of it. No, but sometimes you have to go through obstacles and hurdles and go through the bad times to appreciate the good times. And all I could say is it's worked out. So I mean, I've been fortunate to be surrounded. I've got two beautiful daughters. Like I say, my youngest daughter, she she's been to Italy a few times as well. Both my children have traveled with us whenever we can. She's with her boyfriend right now in New York, which is fantastic because they seem to be such a wonderful couple, and I wish them the best. So I mean, when you say what's my passions, I think just the fact that just life itself. I wake up in the morning and I look out and I see. Right now, I'm looking out my window. I'm looking at a mountain. I'm looking at blue sky, and I'm thinking, whoever created this did a very good job. And those of us who believe in that, we thank them for that. We thank him. We thank her. We thank whoever your God may be. And I won't narrow it down to just, I have my personal beliefs, but everybody's going to have their own. And I'm not going to discount anybody else's beliefs. But my feeling, as long as everyone kind of does their best, what they can to, there are certain rules that are just like, they're so simple, but yet if you follow them, it would make life a lot easier. And you can start with do unto others as they would do unto you. And if everybody followed that rule, we might be a much happier planet. But, we'll see.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Joe.
Joe, it was a pleasure, and more than a pleasure. It was a blessing to have you here.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel so emotional.
No, it's mine. It's mine. I as you know, in my profession, I get to do a lot of different kinds of interviews, and it's usually the subject matter is more about, what's this project, what's the character you're playing, and this, that, and the other. This is a little bit different, and I can appreciate that because it takes me to a place that is a little more personal and a little more about life itself.
Thank you.
What I do as for my career is just that's just my job. But we're talking about life, and for all of us. You have your lives, I have mine, and a chance for me to talk to two beautiful women on a Tuesday early afternoon.
So thank you so much, Joe. It was a blessing to have your Crave. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. It really, really, really was a pleasure. And God willing, we'll cross paths again, and we can hopefully all meet in person someday.